I have been obsessed with benchmark videos of these new Macs, M3 Macs, and M3 Pro MacBook Pros, man. We told you last week there's pretty much only two MacBook Pros, M3 MacBook Pros you should get. One is the base M3, and one is the M3 Max. Don't even bother with the M3 Pro. It's essentially as powerful as the M2 Pro, and in some tests, just not even as fast as that. So save your money. In my opinion, get the M2. Get the M2 Max or the M2 Pro. Don't go with the M2 Pro. Well, we've got some more benchmarking here, and hats off to Max Tech. I mean, dude, they're doing so much benchmarking. They must be spending massive amounts of time doing this benchmarking, testing absolutely everything that you would want to know about the different models. And this week, they released the video that I have been waiting for, right? Because my go-to play was, let's save money on the M3 Max 16-inch because they raised the price. And let's see if we can get away with going with the 14-inch with the same specs because it's cheaper. But historically, the problem has been that the 14-inch is not able to actually keep up performance-wise with the 16-inch, even if they're spec'd exactly the same, because it doesn't have the same level of cooling that the larger 16-inch has. So they start out this video, and I'll link to this in the show notes, with just showing you the bottom of the two machines so that you could see their fans. And as soon as they opened up the bottom, I was like, this is not going to go well. like the fans on the 14-inch are, I would say, half the size of the 16-inch version. And I was like, okay, maybe it will still be able to keep up. And then they did a thickness comparison, and they held the two up. Let me see if I can find this. And you can see that the 16-inch MacBook Pro is significantly thicker than, here we go, than the 14-inch. So if you're watching the live stream, the 16-inch is on the left, the 14-inch is on the right, and you can see the 16-inch is significantly thicker. And then that sealed it for me. I'm like, I wouldn't even have to watch any more of the video to tell you that the 14-inch is not going to be able to keep up, because if they built in the larger fans and the extra thickness into the 16-inch, they did that for cooling reasons. There's no other reason why they would do that. And then they didn't do that in the 14-inch. It's not going to be able to keep up. And sure enough, the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the same specs as the 16-inch is slower across all the tests. It thermal throttles like crazy. It can't deliver the same wattage to the SoC because it just can't keep itself cool. And in virtually all the tests, it lagged behind. Sometimes it lagged behind a lot. So there's your answer. I'm not going to go through all the benchmarks. I'll just leave you to watch this video if you want to go check it out. It's a great video. And the 14-inch can't keep up. And they also released another video, which I'll talk about here in a sec. But Griffin, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say, well, maybe my counterpoint before you revealed the answer would be that the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro have similar degrees of performance with the same chip. But I think the answer there is that the Mac Pro is overkill. The Mac Studio is designed to, handle the Max and Ultra chips without any thermal throttling. The Mac Pro is just unnecessary because it was designed around an Intel Xeon chip, and it's now, just sitting there with all of the space and free airflow in the world that it does not need.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it just seems like an option to give people who don't want to spend the money on the Max chips at this point. But, and then, so the other video they released, which I thought was interesting, was they compared the base level M3 MacBook Pros with different amounts of RAM. So the base M3 MacBook Pro with the M3 chip comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM. People on the internet have been bashing Apple, saying that that's ridiculous for a pro-level machine. And Apple came out and said, well, it's like, we use it so efficiently that you don't even need 16. It's, it's like having 8 gigabytes of RAM on a MacBook Pro is like having 16 gigabytes on a Windows machine. So Max Tech did the tests, and sure enough, the 16 gigabyte model absolutely destroys the 8 gigabyte model. It's actually surprising how much worse the 8 gigabyte model did. It is not able to keep up in any of the tests. And in some of the tests, the 16 gigabyte model was like 400% faster in the Final Cut Pro export test. So it only confirms what I surmised last week, and that is I'm on the wrong screen, and that is the base level M3 MacBook Pro is effectively a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air Pro. It is a MacBook Air with a better screen, better speakers, but from a performance perspective, it really suffers because of the 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now, you could upgrade for $200 and get 16 gigabytes of RAM, but at that point, you're at $1799. Well, the M2 Pro base MacBook Pro, which comes with 18 gigabytes of RAM instead of 16, is only $200 more. And you get 11 CPU cores instead of 8 on the base MacBook Pro, and 14 GPU cores instead of 11 on the base MacBook Pro. So it's like for an extra $200, it's like Apple does such a good job luring you up that feature ladder, right? It's like, oh, well, I don't really want to spend that much money, but if I only spend an extra $200, I'm going to get all these extra features. Well, then if I only spend another extra $200, and then you're in my territory. You're like, I'm going to just, spend 40. I might as well just spend $4,400 and get the M3.
Just max it out.
Yeah. So
after watching these tests, do you feel as though you have reached a finale, a definitive decision on your upgrade path?
That's a great question. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I do know what my decision is. So at this point, I'm either going to just stick with my M1 Max MacBook Pro for another year, or I'm going to go with the 16-inch and just, swallow it and get the machine. But here's the thing. I think I'm leaning
so the answer is no, you haven't made a decision.
No, but at least I've narrowed it down to what my decision is. So I have made that step. But here's what I would say. Here's what I have landed. So when we talk about how insanely powerful the M3 Max, the top spec chip is, and it is. I mean, it competes with the M1 Ultra and even beats the M1 Ultra in many tests. But in real life usage, right, if you get double the performance in Final Cut Pro exports, and I don't even know if that's true, but let's just say you're exporting a video. It goes from, it would take you normally 4 minutes, now it takes you like 7 minutes. Is that the kind of extra time savings that's worth the cost? For most normal people, even if the M3 Max MacBook Pro is double the speed of the M1 Max, you're talking about the savings of minutes in most tasks. And for most people, they could spare a few minutes. They don't really care. You're not sitting in front of your computer waiting for a video to export. You'll go do something different. The only people that I think it really makes sense for are companies that are paying developers, people who are doing really intense tasks and they do them day in, day out, right? So that time savings really adds up. And then people who have the cash, they don't care. So if you're in one of those categories, it's probably worth upgrading. For everyone else, I think it actually might be worth to wait for the M4 generation, because the M1 Max is such an incredible chip, even though it lags behind in all the tests, obviously, except for maybe some of the SSD tests. I think in the SSD write test, it actually might be faster than the M3 Max for some weird reason. But it's still fast enough to do everything that you want to do. Like I opened up, I have iStat menus, which has a host of of different monitors across my computer. And I was looking at my memory pressure to see if I'm using a lot of memory, and maybe that would be a reason to upgrade. No, I'm not. I never even sweat my machine. My M1 Max doesn't even break a light perspiration. It is always, I'm way underutilizing the power I already have. So when you think about it, now I don't like thinking about it that way because I have an emotional need to have the best that Apple offers at all times. But I don't have a practical need, which I think is more the space that Griffin operates in. He's like, do I have a practical need for this thing? Whereas looking at it from an emotional perspective, I'm like, I just need to have the best that they have. But I really actually don't have a practical need to do this because I'm not even sweating the equipment I already have. It's so good that I could probably make another 3 years if I wanted to. So that's where I'm at. And I'll link to both of these tests in the show notes so you can check them out. Max Tech does